Today is 17th of August, and we're on the chapter 36, Vedana Samyutta. I come to Sutta 36.7. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Vesali in the great wood, in the hall with the peaked roof. Then in the evening, the Blessed One emerged from seclusion and went to the sick ward, where he sat down in the appointed seat and addressed the monks thus: "Monks, a monk should await his time, mindful and clearly comprehending." This is the translation here. I prefer to use recollected and mindful. This is our instruction to you. And how monks? Is a monk recollected? Here monks. A monk dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, mindful, recollected, having put away covetousness and grief in regard to the world. Similarly, he dwells contemplating feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma, recollected, mindful, having put away covetousness and grief in regard to the world. It is in such a way that a monk is recollected. And how monks does a monk exercise mindfulness or full awareness? Here monks, a monk is one who acts with full awareness when going forward and returning, and looking ahead and looking aside, and drawing in and extending the limbs, when wearing his robes and carrying his outer bowl, his outer robe and bowl, and eating, drinking, chewing his food and tasting, and defecating and urinating, and walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, speaking and keeping silent. It is in such a way that a monk exercises full awareness or mindfulness. A monk should await his time, recollected and mindful. This is our instruction to you. Stop here for a moment. So here, one day, the Buddha went to this place where the sick monks stay, and then he told the monks that they should practice sati sampajanya. Sati, the translation is recollection. That means the definition here is how is a monk sato? How is a monk recollected? Here monks, a monk dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, mindful, recollected, having put away covetousness and grief in regard to the world. Similarly, he dwells contemplating feelings, mind, Dhamma, ardent, mindful, recollected, having put away covetousness and grief. So that is how to practice sati. So sati is not general mindfulness. Sati, we use the word mindfulness, it is a specific mindfulness directed only to four things, to the body, feelings, mind and Dhamma. So Dhamma, of course, is the Buddha's teachings. This sati can be said to be recollection. That means putting your mind only in these four objects of recollection. Or you can say sati means remembering, to put your attention or your mindfulness only on four things. The first one, it says, dwell contemplating the body in the body. Probably it means, that means you're contemplating body in the body. That means your mind is not scattered. You're not like contemplating body among your thoughts. If you have a lot of thoughts or stray thoughts, then you might attempt to contemplate the body, for example, the breath body, when you practice anapanasati, trying to be mindful of the breath. But sometimes a beginner will have a lot of stray thoughts. So when you have a lot of stray thoughts, you're trying to contemplate the body among the thoughts. But here it says contemplating the body in the body. Nowhere else. So it's one-pointed attention on the body to the exclusion of everything else. Similarly, contemplating feelings, mind and Dhamma. Dhamma is the Buddha's teachings, and actually among all the four things, the Dhamma is the most important. Because later you will find out that out of 5 occasions in which a person attains liberation or arahanthood, 4 of them have to do with contemplating Dhamma. So that is sati, how to practice sati, contemplating only 4 things. And how to practice sampajanya, sati sampajanya. Sampajanya, the translation is full awareness or mindfulness. So here the Buddha says if a person practices sampajanya, then he is very mindful of his actions when going forward and returning, when looking ahead, looking aside, when drawing in and extending his limbs, when wearing his robes, carrying his bowl, and eating, drinking, urinating, walking, standing, sitting, everything is mindful. This is the meaning of sampajanya, mindful. So sometimes people confuse. They say that sati is mindful. It's actually sampajanya. The meaning is mindful. So the Buddha says to the sick monks, you should wait your time to pass away. But in the meantime, you should practice sati sampajanya. Monks, while a monk dwells thus, collected and mindful, diligent, ardent and resolute, if there arises in him a pleasant feeling, he understands thus, there has arisen in me a pleasant feeling. Now that is dependent, not independent. Dependent on what? Dependent on this very body. But this body is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen. So when the pleasant feeling has arisen, in dependence on a body that is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen, how could it be permanent? He dwells contemplating impermanence in the body and in pleasant feeling. He dwells contemplating vanishing, contemplating fading away, contemplating cessation, contemplating relinquishment. Stop here for a moment. So here he contemplates impermanence in the body and in the pleasant feeling, and how they can vanish away, fade away, they can cease. So he should contemplate also letting go, relinquishment of them. As he dwells thus, the underlying tendency to lust in regard to the body and in regard to pleasant feeling is abandoned by him. Let's stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says, if a monk practices sati sampajanya, and then when pleasant feeling arises, he knows that pleasant feeling is only temporary. It depends on conditions. It depends on the existence of the body and other factors. But the body is impermanent. So the body is impermanent. The pleasant feeling is also impermanent. So he contemplates how they can pass away. So you can see impermanence, then the underlying tendency to lust for the body and for pleasant feeling is abandoned in him. Monks, while a monk dwells thus, collected and mindful, diligent, ardent and resolute, if there arises in him a painful feeling, he understands thus, there has arisen in me a painful feeling. Now that is dependent, not independent. Dependent on what? Dependent on just this body. But this body is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen. So when the painful feeling has arisen in dependence on a body that is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen, how could it be permanent? He dwells contemplating impermanence in the body and in painful feeling. He dwells contemplating vanishing, contemplating fading away, contemplating cessation, contemplating relinquishment. As he dwells thus, the underlying tendency to aversion in regard to the body and in regard to painful feeling is abandoned by him. Monks, while a monk dwells thus, collected and mindful, diligent, ardent and resolute, if there arises in him a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he understands thus, there has arisen in me a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Now that is dependent, not independent. Dependent on what? dependent on just this body. But this body is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen. So when the neither painful nor pleasant feeling has arisen in dependence on a body that is impermanent, conditioned, dependently arisen, how could it be permanent? He dwells contemplating impermanence in the body and in neither painful nor pleasant feeling. He dwells contemplating vanishing, contemplating fading away, contemplating cessation, contemplating relinquishment. As he dwells thus, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to the body and in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling is abandoned by him. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a painful feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. When he feels a feeling, here it says terminating with the body, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with the body. When he feels a feeling terminating with life, he understands, I feel a feeling terminating with life. He understands, with the breakup of the body, following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here. Just as monks, an oil lamp burns in dependence on the oil and the wick, and with the exhaustion of the oil and the wick, it is extinguished through lack of fuel. So too monks, when a monk understands a feeling terminating with the body, terminating with life, he understands, with the breakup of the body following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here. That's the end of the sutta. This last part now, where it says, when he feels a feeling terminating with the body, it's a bit hard to understand what's a feeling terminating with the body. But the Pali Text Society translation says, when he feels a feeling that his bodily endurance has reached its limit, he understands that he so feels. When he feels a feeling that life has reached its limit, he understands that he so feels. So the first part now, according to the Pali Text Society, that his bodily endurance has reached its limit. Maybe enduring the pain has reached the limit. And the second one is he knows when the life is going to end. So this sutta was spoken for the monks who were in the sick ward. All of them sick, some of them seriously sick. So the Buddha is telling them how to face death, to be recollected and mindful. Recollected means to put their attention on the 4 stations of sati or satipatthana, and not to think of unwholesome thoughts. And then on top of that, to practice sampajanya, mindfulness of the body actions. When we are mindful of our body actions, it helps to keep our mind focused. Our mind does not run away. When our mind runs away, then we forget about our body. That's why mindfulness of the body is always stressed by the Buddha, probably for this reason, so that our mind does not stray away. So, if a monk practices sati sampajanya, and whatever feeling arises, he knows that it is impermanent, it's not attached to it. He knows that it will pass away. And the last part, it says, with the breakup of the body following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here. So when our life comes to an end, or whatever feelings we felt, all will become cool. Whatever we thought was important when we die, it's all no more important. When we die, the most important thing is where we are going. A lot of people, they don't prepare for that moment when we have to go off. Then they start crying because they are not prepared. But if you are prepared, then at the last moment we will have confidence. The next sutta is 36.11 on page 1270. Then a certain monk approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said to him, "Dear Venerable Sir, while I was alone in seclusion, a reflection arose in my mind thus. 3 feelings have been spoken of by the Blessed One. Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. These 3 feelings have been spoken of by the Blessed One. But the Blessed One has said, whatever is felt is included in suffering." Now with reference to what was this stated by the Blessed One? Whatever is felt is included in suffering. And the Buddha said, good monk, these 3 feelings have been spoken of by me. Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. These 3 feelings have been spoken of by me. And I have also said, whatever is felt is included in suffering. That has been stated by me with reference to the impermanence of conditioners. The Pali word is sankhara, here it says formations. But I like to translate it as conditioners. Earlier we read conditioners, condition other things. That has been stated by me with reference to conditioners being subject to destruction, to conditioners being subject to vanishing, to conditioners being subject to fading away, to conditioners being subject to cessation, to conditioners being subject to change. Stop here for a moment. This word sankhara, it means conditioners, that which conditions something else. And in relation to our body, the main sankhara is volition, free will. And we use our will, then we condition the world around us, condition a lot of things with our free will. Conditioners, generally, they condition other things. For example, like A, when A comes into existence, and then because of A, then B comes into existence. So, A is the conditioner of B, and B is the conditioned thing. But after B arises, it will condition C to arise. So, B then becomes the conditioner of C, and C becomes the conditioned thing. So in this world, everything are conditioners as well as conditioned things. Then the Buddha said, "Then monk, I have also taught the successive cessation of conditioners. For one who has attained the first jhana, speech has ceased. For one who has attained the second jhana, thought, directed and sustained, have ceased. For one who has attained the third jhana, delight has ceased, piti. For one who has attained the fourth jhana, breathing has ceased. For one who has attained the base of the infinity of space, the perception of form has ceased. For one who has attained the base of the infinity of consciousness, the perception pertaining to the base of the infinity of space has ceased. For one who has attained the base of nothingness, the perception pertaining to the base of the infinity of consciousness has ceased. For one who has attained the base of neither perception nor non-perception, the perception pertaining to the base of nothingness has ceased. For one who has attained the cessation of perception and feeling, perception and feeling have ceased. For a monk whose stains are destroyed, lust has ceased, hatred has ceased, delusion has ceased." Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, he has taught the successive cessation of conditioners. What do you mean by that? You see, for the second jhana, some other suttas have mentioned this. When you attain the second jhana, the thought, directed and sustained have ceased. Now thought is a conditioner, because you must have thought before you can speak. When a person attains the second jhana, then the speech conditioner, thought is called the speech conditioner, vachi sankhara. The speech conditioner will have ceased. Then when one attains the fourth jhana, breathing stops. Now breathing is the body conditioner, because for the body to exist, to be alive, you need breathing. So breathing is the body conditioner. Body conditioner is called Kaya Sankara. So breathing being the Kaya Sankara, when you attain the fourth jhana, then Kaya Sankara ceases, breathing ceases. And then when you attain the cessation of perception and feeling, perception and feeling ceases. Now when perception and feeling ceases, the mind also ceases, because perception and feeling, when it ceases, consciousness also will cease, because they all come together. Perception and feeling is the mental conditioner, Chitta Sankara. Chitta Sankara. So when a person attains a cessation of perception and feeling, Chitta Sankara ceases. So from here you can see, this is the successive cessation of the Sankaras. Then monks, I have taught the successive subsiding of conditioners. For one who has attained the first jhana, speech has subsided. Similarly, for one who has attained the second jhana, thought has subsided. For one who has attained the third jhana, delight has subsided. So on, just like before. There are among these 6 kinds of tranquilization, pasadi. For one who has attained the first jhana, speech has been tranquilized. For one who has attained the second jhana, thought directed and sustained have been tranquilized. For one who has attained the third jhana, delight has been tranquilized. For one who has attained the fourth jhana, breathing has been tranquilized. For one who has attained the cessation of perception and feeling have been tranquilized. For a monk whose asavas are destroyed, lust has been tranquilized, hatred has been tranquilized, delusion has been tranquilized. That's the end of the sutta. So earlier the monk said he doesn't understand what the Buddha means. Whatever is felt is included in suffering. So what the Buddha means is that whatever is felt is impermanent. So because it is impermanent, if you have pleasant feeling, when it goes away, then you have suffering. And then if you have unpleasant feeling, is also suffering. And then the neutral feeling, I guess if you are ignorant of it, is also maybe considered suffering. Then the Buddha talked about the various jhanas. How when you attain one jhana after another, certain conditions cease. Okay. I go to the next sutta, is 36.19. Panchakanga. This sutta is also found in the Majjhima Nikaya, sutta number 59. Then the carpenter Panchakanga approached the Venerable Udayi, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and asked him, Venerable Udayi, how many kinds of feeling have been spoken by the Blessed One? And he said, 3 kinds of feelings, carpenter, has been spoken of by the Blessed One. Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. These are the 3 kinds of feelings that have been spoken of by the Blessed One. When this was said, the carpenter Panchakanga said to the Venerable Udayi, the Blessed One did not speak of 3 kinds of feelings, Venerable Udayi. He spoke of 2 kinds of feelings, pleasant feeling and painful feeling. As to this, neither painful nor pleasant feeling, Venerable Sir, the Blessed One has said that this is included in the peaceful and sublime pleasure. The second time and the third time, the Venerable Udayi stated his position, and the second time and the third time, the carpenter Panchakanga stated his. But the Venerable Udayi could not convince the carpenter Panchakanga, nor could the carpenter Panchakanga convince the Venerable Udayi. The Venerable Ananda heard this conversation between the Venerable Udayi and the carpenter Panchakanga. Then he approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and reported to the Blessed One the entire conversation. The Blessed One said, Ananda, it was a true method of exposition that the carpenter Panchakanga would not approve of from the monk Udayi. And it was a true method of exposition that the monk Udayi would not approve of from the carpenter Panchakanga. I have spoken of 2 kinds of feelings by one method of exposition. I have spoken of 3 kinds of feelings by another method of exposition. I have spoken of 5 kinds of feelings. Similarly, I have spoken of 6 kinds of feelings, 18 kinds of feelings, 36 kinds of feelings, and I have spoken of 108 kinds of feelings by still another method of exposition. Thus, Ananda, the Dhamma has been taught by me through different methods of exposition. Now, I'll stop here for a moment. That's why from here you can see why it's important to study many suttas. Because if you study one sutta, you find the Buddha says there are only 2 kinds of feelings. And then you have this view, like this carpenter, he says, the Buddha says there's only 2 kinds of feelings. But the Venerable Udayi, he heard another talk by the Buddha where the Buddha said there are 3 kinds of feelings. Then he insists there's only 3 kinds of feelings. But actually the Buddha says he has given many talks and given different kinds of teaching, saying not only 2 and 3 kinds of feeling, there's also 5 kinds, 6 kinds, 18 kinds, 36 kinds, and 108 kinds of feeling. When the Dhamma has been taught by me in such a way through different methods of exposition, it may be expected of those who will not concede, allow, and approve of what is well stated and well spoken by others, that they will become contentious and quarrelsome and engage in disputes, and that they will dwell stabbing each other with verbal daggers. But when the Dhamma has been taught by me in such a way, through different methods of exposition, it may be expected of those who will concede, allow and approve of what is well stated and well spoken by others, that they will live in concord, with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. Ananda, there are these 5 chords of sensual pleasure. What 5? Forms cognizable by the eye, that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. Similarly, there are sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, taste cognizable by the tongue, tactile objects cognizable by the body, that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. These are the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. The pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on these 5 chords of sensual pleasure, this is called sensual pleasure. Though some may say, this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here, Ananda, secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thought directed and sustained. Delight and happiness born of seclusion, this is that other kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Let's stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying that worldly pleasure is enjoyment of forms, of sounds, I can say sights, sounds, smells, taste and touch. And most worldly people, since they know of no higher pleasure, they only enjoy this worldly sensual pleasure. But the Buddha says a higher type of pleasure, a higher kind of happiness is the first jhana. And the definition of the first jhana is very clear here. Not like the vipassana jhana we heard yesterday. And then the Buddha continued. Though some may say, this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here, Ananda, with the subsiding of thought directed and sustained, a monk enters and dwells in the second jhana, which has internal confidence and unification of mind, is without thought directed and sustained, and has delight and happiness born of concentration. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Though some may say, this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, with the fading away as well of delight, among dwells equanimous and mindful and clearly comprehending. He experiences happiness with the body. He enters and dwells in the third jhana, of which the noble ones declare, he is equanimous, collected, one who dwells happily. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Though some may say, stop here for a moment, you look at this third jhana, he is equanimous. Here it says mindful, the word is, I think, sato. There's from sati, is collected. So some monks, they don't understand the state of jhana. They say, what's the use of jhana? When you are in jhana, you are not mindful. But you look at the third jhana. When the monk enters the third jhana, he's very mindful. It's not like some monks think, when you enter jhana, it's like a trance state. You don't know anything, as though you're asleep. And there's some monks, they say, when they come out of jhana, only they know that they were in jhana. Then that is not jhana, that was a sleep state. But here, this jhana is very mindful, very collected. And then the Buddha continued. Though some may say, this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous passing away of joy and displeasure, a monk enters and dwells in the fourth jhana, which is neither painful nor pleasant, and includes the purification, here it says, purification of mindfulness by equanimity. Actually, I think a better translation is perfect purification of sati and equanimity. So this is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous one, than the previous kind of happiness. So here is in the definition of the fourth jhana, the sati is completely purified. I think parisuddhi or something like that. Complete purification of sati. In other words, sati cannot be more perfect than in this fourth jhana. So it's not that there is no sati in the fourth jhana. And then Buddha continued. Though some may say this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, with the complete transcendence of perceptions of forms, with the passing away of perceptions of sensory impingement, with non-attention to perceptions of diversity, aware that space is infinite, a monk enters and dwells in the base of the infinity of space. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. I'll stop here for a moment to comment on this base of the infinity of space. You see, when a monk enters this state, there is complete transcendence of perceptions of forms. He is no more aware of forms. And also the passing away of perceptions of sensory impingement. In other words, the senses, you can see the senses close. So it's actually only in this first arupa jhana that the 5 sense doors close. Though some may say this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, by completely transcending the base of the infinity of space, aware that consciousness is infinite, a monk enters and dwells in the base of the infinity of consciousness. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Though some may say, this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, by completely transcending the base of the infinity of consciousness, aware that there is nothing, among enters and dwells in the base of nothingness. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Though some may say this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, by completely transcending the base of nothingness, among enters and dwells in the base of neither perception nor non-perception. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Though some may say this is the supreme pleasure and joy that beings experience, I would not concede this to them. Why is that? Because there is another kind of happiness more excellent and sublime than that happiness. And what is that other kind of happiness? Here Ananda, by completely transcending the base of neither perception nor non-perception, among enters and dwells in the cessation of perception and feeling. This is that other kind of happiness, more excellent and sublime than the previous kind of happiness. Now, it is possible, Ananda, that wanderers of other sects might speak thus. The ascetic Gautama speaks of the cessation of perception and feeling, and he maintains that it is included in happiness. What is that? How is that? When wanderers of other sects speak thus, Ananda, they should be told, the Blessed One, friends, does not describe a state as included in happiness only with reference to pleasant feeling, but rather, friends, wherever happiness is found, and in whatever way, the Tathagata describes that as included in happiness. The end of the sutta. So here you see the different states of happiness going higher and higher. And the highest is this cessation of perception and feeling. When perception and feeling ceases, it also means that consciousness ceases. The sixth consciousness at the sense basis ceases. And there is no higher happiness than that, because that is the state of parinibbana. When a monk dies, enters parinibbana, then the sixth consciousness stops. So even though there is no feeling, the Buddha says, Nibbanang paramang sukang. Nibbana is the highest bliss. When there is attainment of cessation of consciousness, since there is no consciousness, there is no self. When there is no self, that is the greatest bliss. When we have a self, we keep worrying about the self. So these are the descriptions of the various states of happiness, one higher than the other, until the highest is the cessation of perception and feeling. The next sutta is 36.21. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha, in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Then the wanderer, Molya Sivaka, approached the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, he sat down to one side and said to the Blessed One, Master Gautama, there are some ascetics and Brahmins who hold such a doctrine and view as this. Whatever a person experiences, whether it be pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, all that is caused by what was done in the past. What does Master Gautama say about this? In other words, I was trying to say that all feelings are caused by karma, past karma. And the Buddha said, some feelings, Sivaka, arise here originating from bhava disorders. Some feelings arise here originating from bhava disorders. That some feelings arise here originating from bhava disorders, one can know for oneself, and that is considered to be true in the world. Now when those ascetics and Brahmins hold such a doctrine and view as this, whatever a person experiences, whether it be pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, all that is caused by what was done in the past. They overshoot what one knows by oneself, and they overshoot what is considered to be true in the world. Therefore, I say that this is wrong on the part of those ascetics and Brahmins. Some feelings, Sivaka, arise here originating from phlegm disorders. originating from wind disorders, originating from an imbalance of the three, originating by change or produced by change of climate, produced by careless behavior, caused by assault is chance, external happenings, and finally produced as the result of karma. That some feelings arise here produced as the result of karma, one can know for oneself, and that is considered to be true in the world. Now when those ascetics and Brahmins hold such a doctrine and view as this, whatever a person experiences, whether it be pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, all that is caused by what was done in the past. They overshoot what one knows by oneself, and they overshoot what is considered to be true in the world. Therefore I say that this is wrong on the part of those ascetics and Brahmins. When this was said, the wanderer Molya Sivaka said to the Blessed One, "Magnificent Master Gotama, magnificent Master Gotama," and then he took refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha and became a lay follower. Bile, phlegm and also wind, imbalance and climate too, carelessness and assault, with karma result as the eighth. So here you can see that when we suffer, that means our body suffers, there are 8 reasons. One is bile disorder, another one is phlegm, another one because of wind, and then the fourth is because of imbalance of the three. That means imbalance of the bile, phlegm and the wind. And then the fifth is because of climate change. 6 is because of our carelessness. 7 because of chance, external happenings. And then the 8 is because of karma. So not everything is due to karma. The next sutta, 36.22. Monks, I will teach you a Dhamma exposition on the theme of 108. Listen to that. And what monks is the Dhamma exposition on the theme of the 108? I have spoken of 2 kinds of feelings by one method of exposition. I have spoken of 3 kinds of feelings by another method of exposition. I have spoken of 5 kinds of feelings, 6 kinds of feelings, 18 kinds, 36 kinds, and I have spoken of 108 kinds of feelings. And what monks are the 2 kinds of feelings? Bodily and mental. These are called the 2 kinds of feelings. And what monks are the 3 kinds of feelings? Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. These are the 3 kinds of feelings. And what monks are the 5 kinds of feelings? The pleasure faculty, the pain faculty, the joy faculty, the displeasure faculty, the equanimity faculty. These are called the 5 kinds of feelings. And what monks are the 6 kinds of feelings? Feeling born of eye contact, feeling born of ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, mind contact. These are called the 6 kinds of feeling. And what monks are the 18 kinds of feelings? 6 examinations accompanied by joy, 6 examinations accompanied by displeasure, 6 examinations accompanied by equanimity. These are called the 18 kinds of feeling. How do you get the 6? It must be the 6 sense, at the 6 sense doors. 6 sense doors. 6 at the 6 sense doors. If you experience joy, there are 6 kinds of feelings. And if you experience displeasure, there is another 6 kinds of feelings because of the different bases. And then the equanimity. So 6 times 3. Okay, 18. And what monks are the 36 kinds of feelings? 6 types of joy based on the household life, 6 types of joy based on renunciation, 6 types of displeasure based on the household life, 6 types of displeasure based on renunciation, 6 types of equanimity based on the household life, 6 types of equanimity based on renunciation. These are called the 36 kinds of feelings. And what monks are the 108 kinds of feelings? The above 36 feelings in the past, the above 36 feelings in the future, the above 36 feelings at present. These are called the 108 kinds of feelings. This, monks, is the Dhamma exposition on the theme of the 108. That's the end. The first two kinds of body feelings, body and mental. Body feelings originate from the body. You cut your finger or something, so you have a bodily feeling. And then mental feeling comes from the mind. So for example, if you suffer bodily pain, and then you start thinking about it, and then the more you think, the more you have mental suffering. So the mental suffering comes from the mind. The three kinds of feeling is this way you understand. The five kinds of feeling, two, the pain and the pleasure from the body, pain and pleasure from the mind, and then the equanimity feeling. Okay, I think it's enough about that sutta. The next sutta is 36.23. Then a certain monk approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, Prabhu Sir, what now is feeling? What is the origin of feeling? What is the way leading to the origination of feeling? What is the cessation of feeling? What is the way leading to the cessation of feeling? What is the gratification in feeling? What is the danger? What is the escape? And the Buddha said, there are among these three feelings, pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. This is called feeling. With the arising of contact, there is the arising of feeling. That means arising of contact at the six sense basis. There is the arising of feeling. Craving is the way leading to the origination of feeling. Why is craving the way leading to the origination of feeling? Because feeling comes from the body, and the body comes from craving, right? Because of craving, we have rebirth. The rounds of rebirth. So that's why craving is the way leading to the origination of feeling. With the cessation of contact, there is the cessation of feeling. This noble eightfold path is the way leading to the cessation of feeling. That is right view, right thoughts, etc. The pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on feeling. This is the gratification in feeling. That feeling is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change. This is the danger in feeling. The removal and abandonment of desire and lust for feeling. This is the escape from feeling. That's the end of the sutta. So here you see, it's a very concise explanation of feeling. Feeling arises from contact at the six sense basis, and then the origination of feeling, feeling comes from the body, and the body comes from craving that produces the round of rebirths. That's why craving is said to be the origination of feeling. Then when there's no contact, there's no feeling. The Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the permanent cessation of feeling. Okay. The next sutta is 36.31. Monks, there is carnal delight. This here they say rapture. The word is piti. Piti, like to translate as delight. There is spiritual delight. There is delight more spiritual than the spiritual. There is carnal happiness, sukha. There is spiritual happiness, and there is happiness more spiritual than the spiritual. There is carnal equanimity, upekkha. There is spiritual equanimity, and there is equanimity more spiritual than the spiritual. There is carnal deliverance, or liberation, or release. The Pali word is vimokha. There is spiritual release. There is release more spiritual than the spiritual. And what monks is carnal delight? There are monks. These five chords of sensual pleasure. What five? Forms cognizable by the eye that are lovely, enticing, etc. And then sounds, smells, taste, touch that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. These are the five chords of sensual pleasure. The delight that arises in dependence on these five chords of sensual pleasure. This is called carnal delight. And I'll stop here for a moment. This delight, piti, is not supposed to be a feeling. Feeling is happiness, the pleasure, and displeasure and equanimity. But this piti is not exactly feeling. Exactly what it is very hard to say because our mind consists of many constituents in the mind. So like feeling, perception, volition and all that, all part of the mind. So this delight is not defined under Vedana, not defined under feeling. What monks is spiritual delight? Here secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thought directed and sustained, with delight and happiness born of seclusion. With the subsiding and thought directed and sustained, he enters and dwells in the second jhana, which has internal confidence and unification of mind, is without thought directed and sustained, and has delight and happiness born of concentration. This is called spiritual delight. So here spiritual delight consists of the first jhana and the second jhana. And what monks is the delight more spiritual than the spiritual? When a monk whose asavas are destroyed reviews his mind liberated from lust, liberated from hatred, liberated from delusion, there arises delight. This is called delight more spiritual than the spiritual. So here you can understand what is this delight. Delight is just, to the layman, delight is just a feeling. But somehow in the Buddha's definition, feeling does not seem to include delight. And what monks is carnal happiness? There are monks, these 5 causes of sensual pleasure. What 5? Forms, sounds, smells, taste and touch that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tantalizing. The happiness that arises in dependence on these 5 causes of sensual pleasure, this is called carnal happiness. And what monks is spiritual happiness? Here monks, secluded from sensual pleasures, a monk enters and dwells in the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana. This is called spiritual happiness. So spiritual happiness goes up from the first jhana to the third jhana. And what monks is happiness more spiritual than the spiritual? When a monk whose asavas are destroyed reviews his mind liberated from lust, liberated from hatred, liberated from delusion, there arises happiness. This is called happiness more spiritual than the spiritual. So you can see the difference maybe, it's a shade of difference between delight and happiness. In the case of this Arahant who has just become liberated, then when he reviews his mind having become liberated, you can imagine probably first he has delight, and then after that is followed by happiness. And what monks is carnal equanimity, upekkha. There are monks, these 5 causes of sensual pleasure. What 5? Forms, sounds, smells, taste, touch that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, etc. These are the 5 causes of sensual pleasure. The equanimity that arises in dependence on these 5 causes of sensual pleasure, this is called carnal equanimity. For example, you are on a very hot day, you are bothered by the heat and the dampness, and then you enter a room which is aircon, temperature is just right, and then when you stay in there, then all your disturbed feelings all subside, and then you feel equanimity. And what monks is spiritual equanimity, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous passing away of joy and displeasure. The monk enters and dwells in the 4th jhana, which is neither painful nor pleasant, and includes the utter purification of sati and equanimity. And what monks is equanimity more? So here this 4th jhana, there is utter purification of mindfulness and equanimity. That type of equanimity in the 4th jhana is called the spiritual equanimity. And what monks is equanimity more spiritual than the spiritual? When a monk whose asavas are destroyed reviews his mind liberated from lust, liberated by hatred, liberated from delusion, there arises equanimity. This is called equanimity more spiritual than the spiritual. So probably, going back to the example I gave just now, that probably the Arahant, after he becomes liberated, and then when he reviews his struggle and how he became liberated, first there is delight that he has succeeded, and after that there is happiness, then after later, then his mind becomes equanimous. And what monks is carnal release, vimokha. Deliverance release connected with the form sphere is carnal release. It probably means attainment of the rupa jhana. And what monks is spiritual release. Release connected with the formless sphere is spiritual release. Probably means the arupa jhanas. And what monks is release more spiritual than the spiritual. When a monk whose asavas are destroyed, reviews his mind liberated from lust, from hatred, from delusion, there arises release. This is called release more spiritual than the spiritual. That's the end of the sutta. I think I can stop here tonight. Just finish the Vedana Samyutta.
That's not the rule the indication that person attains first jhana, peace, and second jhana thought meditation of peace.
Yeah.
Okay,
When a person attains the first jhana, his mind is absorbed on the object of his meditation. He has this thought directed and sustained. Thought directed and sustained means, for example, he's meditating on the breath, anapanasati, putting his mindfulness on the breath. Whenever his mind runs away, he directs it back to the breath. That is called thought directed, vitaka. And then vichara is sustaining the attention on the breath, keeping it there. That is vichara. If he continues like this, then the other factors arise. Piti, sukha, and ekagata arise. Then he has entered the first jhana. So his mind is absorbed in the object of meditation, so he cannot speak. You see, for you to speak, you have to think first. You have to think. But in that state of the first jhana, he cannot think. His mind is already absorbed in the object of meditation. He cannot simply think to talk, so he cannot speak. Okay? So in the second jhana, it says the thought directed and sustained ceases. Now, after a monk attains the first jhana, he has to constantly abide in that jhana until he is quite proficient in that jhana. Okay? Then later, when he wants to enter the second jhana, instead of putting his attention on the breath, because now he's become, after much practice, he has become quite steady in the first jhana. After he's got some confidence in the first jhana, he can stay longer in the first jhana. Then he turns his attention from the breath to the piti and sukha. So when he turns his attention to piti and sukha, that is provided piti and sukha are strong enough. So then his mind absorbs into piti and sukha and he's forgotten about the breath. So when he has forgotten about the breath, then he enters the second jhana. He's no more concerned with the breath. So that paying attention on the breath is that vitaka and vichara. So when he enters the second jhana, there is no more vitaka and vichara. He has released, let go of the vitaka and vichara, and his mind is absorbed on piti and sukha. And then only he enters the second jhana. Okay? The Buddha says that perfect samadhi, samma samadhi, in the Noble Eightfold Path, is the 4 jhanas. If you have attained the 4 jhanas, it's mentioned in some sutta, that everything becomes very clear to you. The mind becomes so clear because it's rid of all the defilements. And also you notice in the definition of the 4th jhana, there's complete purity of sati and equanimity. The mind is very equanimous, not disturbed at all. Then when the person comes out of the 4th jhana, the mind is so clear that whatever he contemplates, he can understand very well. So like for example, on the night of the Buddha's enlightenment, he entered the 4 jhanas, and then he came out of the 4th jhana, and then he contemplated his past life. Because the mind was so sharp, so strong, he could easily recall the past life. So the 4 jhanas are enough for a person to have psychic power. So the higher than the fourth jhana, the rupa jhanas, the mind opens up to boundless space, boundless consciousness and all that. And those are bonus issues. Not necessary. If you can get that, even better. Normally the Buddha talks about the 4 jhanas and the 4 arupa jhanas. The highest arupa jhana is the state of neither perception nor non-perception, where the mind is like candlelight, which is almost about to blow off. Sometimes it seems that there is light, sometimes like there is no light like that. So the consciousness is waning. The consciousness is about to go off. So sometimes there is perception, sometimes there is no perception. That's why it says neither perception nor non-perception. That is a very high state where the mind is almost going to stop already. Then after that is a cessation of perception and feeling. That is not included under the arupa jhana, but it can be considered as a kind of concentration. The topmost, the highest, where the mind consciousness just stops. When perception and feeling stops, then consciousness stops, and all the rest, feeling, perception, volition, thinking, everything stops. Here, Ananda, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, is this pleasure and pain is body pleasure and pain, And then with the previous passing away of joy and displeasure, this is mental pleasure and pain, Monk enters and dwells in the 4th jhana, which is neither painful nor pleasant, and includes the purification of mind. So from here it appears like equanimity is similar to the state of neither painful nor pleasant feeling. But this, for people in their normal consciousness, normal state of consciousness, we may experience this neither painful nor pleasant feeling, that means this equanimous feeling for a short while, and then it will be quickly succeeded by other feelings, because our feelings are changing so fast. I remember the simile given by the Buddha is that like the raindrops falling on the pond, as soon as one drop of rain falls on the surface of the pond, a bubble arises and then it bursts. and then another drop falls, and then a bubble arises and it bursts. So when it rains, there's a lot of raindrops. So the feelings arise and pass away like the many bubbles arise and pass away. But in the fourth jhana is different. In the fourth jhana, the mental happiness and suffering has stopped. The bodily happiness and pain also has stopped. So he's completely equanimous for as long as he remains in the fourth jhana. If he stays in that fourth jhana 24 hours, then for 24 hours he only experiences this equanimity, neither painful nor pleasant. That's why it's called utter purification of sati and equanimity. I think this translation is wrong. Purification of mindfulness by equanimity is a complete purification of sati and equanimity. Are you talking about the fourth jhana or not?
I'm talking about the feeling.
That one is the neither painful.
One is ignorant.
What page?
That's the question of
What page is that? What sutta? There is in the sutta it is mentioned that this neutral feeling, there is a tendency to be ignorant of it. Being ignorant of it means you don't notice it. But whether you notice it or you don't notice it, it still exists. Doesn't matter whether you notice it or you don't notice it. It is still equanimity. This ignorance is different from the dependent origination ignorance. This is ignorant of the feeling, not aware, not mindful of the feeling.
So you have the feeling, and the feeling neither painful nor pleasant feeling. That is a feeling of nature you feel that way. So when he doesn't have any more ignorance, realize the truth and all this. So you have the equanimous feeling.
It's the same, isn't it?
It's the same, but because of the ignorance there. When a person has ignorance and the other person don't have ignorance anymore.
I don't see the point. What is the point? Now we are talking about what's the difference between equanimity and neither painful nor pleasant feeling.
That is different. That means this feeling, the feeling neither painful nor pleasant feeling is still not arahant. It is. This feeling can be like how many people will have this feeling?
I don't think so, no? Because is that what you're trying to say? Carnal equanimity is this sensual pleasure can also give rise to equanimity sometimes. As I mentioned, like when a person is very hot, the outside is very hot, he's bothered by the heat, so he's feeling unpleasant body feeling and unpleasant mental feeling. And he enters the aircon room, then the aircon cools down all his feelings, then he's feeling equanimity. So this equanimity, Putu jhana can also experience. It's also called equanimity. And then spiritual equanimity, that's on page 1285. 1285. Carnal equanimity is because of the 5 chords of sensual pleasure, he can also experience equanimity. Then spiritual equanimity is the 4th jhana. It's a higher kind of equanimity because it lasts long. If he enters the jhana for 1 hour, he experiences only equanimity for 1 hour. Whereas the other one, the first one, carnal equanimity, the feelings are changing all the time. So he may feel equanimous for a short while, and then after that, his feelings change again. So equanimity is not only experienced by the Arahant, it's experienced by Putu jhana, it can be experienced by anybody.
Would you like to ask about the short formula for Satipatthana? When Buddha uses the phrase where a man would dwell body in body, feeling, etc., and then having put aside covetousness for the world and
grief.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Some would grief and
Yeah.
pleasure. So I think when you explain that means they have overcome, the now they have overcome the hindrances.
No, you didn't notice. I explained this, I think, more than once. That if an ordinary person, you are moved by the 6 sense objects, sights, sounds, smells, taste, and all that, because you pay attention to them. Then, when you are moved by them, when they give you pleasant feeling, you crave for it. So, that craving for it gives rise to covetousness. Covetousness is wanting to covet, wanting to possess. So, wanting to possess something is an unwholesome state. It's an unwholesome state. It gives rise to defilements. And then if you cannot get it, then you feel grief. The other extreme, you feel grief. So that's why if a person is not careful, he doesn't guard the 6 sense doors, then he will feel these unwholesome states of covetousness and grief coming to attack him. Having put aside, that means he has trained his mind to withdraw from the 6 sense bases and put it only on the 4 objects of Satipatthana. So when he puts it only on the 4 objects of Satipatthana, then he has put aside the covetousness and the grief for worldly things, because he does not pay attention to the 6 sense doors. Right?
I was wondering that he can do that, but not be very meditated in order to be that state.
It depends, because it's Satipatthana, it's just like concentration. If a monk is trying to practice concentration, if he has not perfected his concentration, has not attained jhana, he is only trying to attain jhana. You see? So in the same way, if a person is practicing Satipatthana, it might be that he is only trying to practice Satipatthana, he has not perfected it yet. But when he has perfected it, then he attains samadhi, jhana. Is that what the notes say in the commentary? Oh, there's a commentaries lah. So probably there's a wrong interpretation. That's the danger with commentarial interpretations. Sometimes they misinterpret something.
What's the difference between samadhi and jhana?
Okay, samadhi means concentration. Okay. Now, in the suttas, in the Noble Eightfold Path, the Buddha talked about samma samadhi as perfect samadhi. Okay, perfect samadhi. Perfect samadhi in the suttas is the 4 jhanas. That means you must attain up to the 4th jhana. That is perfect samadhi. Okay, But sometimes in the suttas, whenever the suttas talk about samadhi, the Buddha automatically means perfect samadhi. But that means since perfect samadhi is the fourth jhana, so the first jhana is not perfect samadhi. It's just concentration, it's just samadhi, one type of samadhi. First, second and third is not perfect samadhi. So jhana, first jhana, second jhana, third jhana is not necessarily perfect samadhi. Only the fourth jhana is perfect samadhi. In other words, to become an arahant, you need 4 jhanas. So if you have just 1, 2 and 3, you might become a sakadagamin, second fruit attainer. If you want to attain third fruit and fourth fruit, you must have 4 jhanas. So you look in the case our Siddhartha Gautama, our Buddha, he said in the previous life he had met the Buddha Kassapa. And then after learning the Dhamma from the Buddha Kassapa, he renounced, became a monk. And then after that lifetime, he went to the Tusita heaven. And after Tusita heaven, he came down as Siddhartha Gautama and became the Sakyamuni Buddha. Okay. So when he was a small boy, Siddhartha Gautama, about 10 years old, could attain the first jhana. Right? It's mentioned. Since as a small boy he could attain the first jhana, it shows most probably he learned this first jhana when he was a monk under the Buddha Kassapa. That means in that lifetime as a monk under Buddha Kassapa, he did not attain higher than the first jhana. So having attained the first jhana and learned the Dhamma, very probably he became a Sakadagamin. That's why when he went up to Tusita heaven and came down as Siddhartha Gautama, it was time for him to attain enlightenment. Sakadagamin is a once returner, comes back as a human being only once, must enter Nibbana.
Just like to clarify, sometimes we have a meditation, very good concentration to very calm and all that. And then how do we know whether it is just a pure calmness or whether jhana and all that? What is the borderline of the border between just normal calmness and jhana?
If you want to understand, then you look into the sutta, the description of the first jhana. In the description of the first jhana, Buddha says, secluded or aloof from sensual pleasures, aloof from unwholesome states. Aloof from sensual pleasures, that means he doesn't pay any attention to the sense doors. He does not pay attention to sights, sounds, smells, tastes and all that. And then aloof from unwholesome states. He has no unwholesome thoughts. Does not think about the house, does not think about the office and all that. Then the monk enters and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by 5 factors. Vitaka, vichara, thought directed and sustained. And then piti and sukha, delight and happiness. And then ekagata, one-pointed mind. So, if you enter the first jhana, you must have these 5 factors. If you don't have these 5 factors, and you have not entered, and you notice these 5 factors does not include the light. Nowadays, a lot of meditation teachers talk about the light. It's not inside here. Okay, shall we stop here tonight?